Well, it looks like Harvard is also back to standardized testing. After telling high school juniors and seniors that they would not have to submit test scores in order to get into Harvard for the next couple years, Harvard is actually reversing its course, saying that they were wrong, they lied to students, and now they're going to require that students submit an SAT or an ACT score if they're applying to the school, starting with this next application cycle. So if you're a high school junior and you're thinking about applying to Harvard, you're going to have an ACT or an SAT score. So looking right here at the Harvard website, in big bold letters, it says return to required testing on April 11th of 2024. And this is a letter from the dean of the Harvard College saying, "Dear entire community, colleges and universities across the country paused standardized testing at the start of COVID when nobody had access to reliable testing sites. And as we, the viewers, know, if you've been paying attention to my videos, you know that they also paused it because they wanted more people to apply. They wanted to appease people who called these tests unfair and discriminatory, and they wanted to boost their rankings in publications like the Wall Street Journal, US News and World Report, etc., etc." The dean goes on to say, "As testing again became available, we continue to use standardized test scores as an optional part of the admissions application, with the guidance that this practice was expected to go through the class of 2030. However, it turns out that Harvard was actually lying to students of the class of 2029 and 2030. They thought they had enough data to go on without standardized tests being mandatory, but the dean continues on to say, "I write to announce that starting with next year's admission cycle, 2 years before they were supposed to even reevaluate the test optional policies, they're going back to test mandatory. The college will accept the SAT or ACT to meet the standardized test requirement. And in exceptional cases in which those tests are not acceptable, a set of alternative standardized tests can meet the requirement." So basically, every single student who's applying to Harvard is going to have to either take the ACT or the SAT. And they look at these two scores as completely interchangeable. They don't have any difference or any preference between the SAT or the ACT. So now let's get into the reason that they're citing for getting rid of the test optional policy. And I'm expecting it to be very similar to the other schools that have already made this announcement, like Yale, Dartmouth, Brown, MIT, Georgetown, and UT Austin, among a number of other schools. So Harvard says that this decision to return to required testing was motivated by a number of factors. Standardized tests are a means for all students, regardless of their background and life experience, to provide information that is predictive of success in college and beyond. When students have the option of not submitting, they may choose to withhold information that, when interpreted by the admissions committee in the context of the local norms of their school, could have potentially helped their application. In short, more information, especially such strongly predictive information, is valuable for identifying talent from across the entire socioeconomic range. So basically, Harvard is saying the same thing that Dartmouth and Yale and Brown and all other schools have also said, which is that standardized testing actually helps people from the lower socioeconomic status. Students who go to these elite private schools and have a ton of money to spend on their extracurriculars, flying around the country to do internships and research opportunities, are going to have much more of a leg up when there's no standardized testing involved. Whereas students from lower socioeconomic backgrounds who don't have access to those resources, those internships, the research opportunities, and so forth, can actually have the SAT or the ACT kind of be like a leveling of the playing field. And in terms of this initial announcement, that's really all that the Harvard dean had to say. But we do know that a lot more research came out from Harvard in the past year about this test optional policy. The Harvard Gazette tells us that in research published last year, 2 different Harvard professors, Raj Chetty and David Deming, as well as co-author John Friedman, they used data from more than 400 institutions and about 3.5 million undergrads to better understand socioeconomic diversity and admissions. And it turns out that standardized tests emerge as an important tool to identify promising students at less well-resourced high schools, particularly when paired with other academic credentials. And so once again, we see that with these standardized tests, even though they may be criticized by a lot of people, they're actually leveling the playing field for students of lower socioeconomic backgrounds. But more importantly than all of this background and the why, is that if you are a student or you have a student who's applying to college soon, you are going to need to take one of these standardized tests. At this point, there's absolutely no way around it. 4 of the Ivy League schools have now gone back to test mandatory, including the biggest one, Harvard. And now that Harvard has gone back, every single other school will have to follow suit. All of the other schools out there want to be just like the Ivy League, and specifically like Harvard. Harvard's the biggest name in all of the world, and once they've gone back, everybody else, the elite schools, the public schools, the state schools, the Ivy Plus, whatever you want to call all of your other schools of interest, they're all going to be going back to test mandatory policies in the near future. And so if you're a high school junior and you've been banking on test optional policies as a way to get into college, you may be having the rug pulled out from underneath you right now. But that's okay, because while you may have a little bit of a later start than everybody else, there's still plenty of time to get your ACT score up into the right range before applying to college this October. But you do need a plan and you need to start soon. The absolute worst thing that you can do with your ACT preparation is waiting too long to get it started. With standardized testing, the more comfortable you can get with the test itself, the better you're going to do. Students typically find that they take these tests 3 or 4 times before they're satisfied with their scores. So you want to plan for that when you're laying out your schedule. What I recommend that all of my students do is start now and pick a testing date that's 6 to 12 weeks out in the future and lay out a plan to go from where you are right now to where you need to be in terms of your preparation to take that test in 6 to 12 weeks. So if you haven't started yet, I would pick a testing date, take a diagnostic test using realistic practice questions, and then make a plan from there to see how you can work on all of your weaknesses before that testing date. Now, if you're looking to make some serious improvement over a short period of time, check out the free case study that I have linked below. It'll show you exactly how one of my students increased her score from a 22 all the way up to a 30. All the steps that we took to get her that 8-point score improvement can be viewed at the link below. So just go ahead, check out that case study and see how your student can make a similar improvement in such a short time frame as well. And for more college admissions and standardized testing advice, stay locked in here on my channel and I'll see you in the next one.